Learn with Duop.
Mala. Welcome back to Learn With Duop. I hope mal pain kun rekon di alti yenten re university di alti yenten. So kai hobo gwarun we gwa kwendun we gwa long that chi mini chi tak ka yendial. So de chung ko kwene bum ka chum ro kun along. So mi chiran kwen brand video ne ba ban gwe chiran kwen brand video ne ba gwe. Langa yebo ko mate makan rai lo ni kun ka kan pahant biaun community bia take comment section gwa mo ba loy ke video mi check mate do mo dong de la loy ran ka je bo loy ran ka je. Okay, so wala bana chapter 2 chapter 3 part 2 dung logic. So bana which an to con definition of language philosophy of language con which ka chi correct bo ke purpose of definition, why we need definition. So ka chi con right type of definition de con chi con within and part 1 and done. So wala bana ben ka part 2 de before kan kon ka jan fa tu me. So please de jilan ko mi kin subscribe ko subscribe ko subscription kun lo kan ko kan ke motivated. So ka kwa comment ka kwa like ka kwa share ka friend kun di al ten ko na kan channel mi chet ka jana me kan kan jak. So channel nang ka karan channel ana mane. Okay, channel nang ka akar. Without further ado, bana part 2 bana to dung chapter 3. So ka part 2 me bana technique of definition bana with pin den technique of definition me ta extensional technique tin kan intentional technique ta kan tan. Okay, ko kore yo finally bana criteria of lexical definition. So bana which. Okay, so bana which. So me to ko na ka technique of definition kia ka technique of extension ka part 1 ne so ko na jaga extension la riat la ja define by listing the example kia by listing the members of that word. Okay, so kon jagane ka extension definition o mo ko do define extensionally be list ni members ni tin tray read na mo. Okay, tin ta pin read na mo so kon jak change na no. So an extensional definition ko meaning ko provide dung term by listing example to the term which is being defined. Okay, so there are three ways to dong da kon term da kon define ka extension definition. Okay, so manem o dong da kon nyo dan term more physically da kon point to them physically o term me jane lo nyo kon physically. Okay, so merode o dong da kon example lo gan term more da kon release individually. Okay, individually calcale. Okay, so mandiotian o dong da kon could release by subclass ke by group. Okay, da kon in term mo da kon release by group. Okay, so by group. So can docty then can group kon dong da kon term da kon define ke members ke che ga class ke. Okay, class ke. So ka technique nyam ta dong da kon term da kon define extensionally mutual demonstrative. Okay, demonstrative ke ostensive definition. Okay, so ka ostensive definition mean one term da na ko do mako define be defined by pointing to example like an term more physically. Okay, physically. So before into them physically mako define so an mission ka jana me wajin the most primitive form of definition ko dita ko do define physically new ni jana ajin point na me do. So ko na primitive form of definition. Okay, a primitive form of definition. So ka example ata wo muk chai yo ku share ko define mu chai yo define share be share to define share jan na me nyu do kom ne ten kom ne nyu do ke physically. Okay, so nyu do ke physically. So mu chai yo ko hours ko define the hours they define by showing here by pointing to the picture in hours in duel or duel na me nyu do tour ne ke and duel. So in definition mo actual demonstrative definition ke demonstrative techniques definition. Okay, nyu do ke kan members ni in term no mo ko share ta members ni kan kwam ne are actual share. So begin your physically we share na me. So no more actual demonstrative definition. And demonstrative definition na me wata ke da kan definition to kon ko dita defining and read down ko define a gesture. Okay, a gesture mo pointing. Okay, ko an wo ku lo point kana me kom jene na mo jan ta ko le define ke jeri. So she ngada ka she word ba gesture ko nyu be riya mo and definite kian mo kudo ko define ko ji kon je kane and definition tre de to fa te ke definitum kane definitum je re ko define okay share je re ko define okay but definite jen re to kon ko do la define so ka demonstrative career to ke gesture ko nyu de ke okay ko nyu de wo jene so no mo chwalu demonstrative ke ostensive definition Kumang defined by pointing to them physically. Okay, by pointing to them physically. So, madong, mutually enumerative definition. So, enumerative definition me or the term they define ko the members na kan term mo di ka list individually. Okay, di ka list individually. Di pangen di ka gor kalkale. Siga da gor kele la group di ka gor kalkale. Either ko gor kan dial kele wup ki gor na thankien. Okay, ki gor na thankien. For example, now, which I do, which you know, actor be define, we define. This actor mean person such as LTD, ke lul de Geo, Emmanuel Jal, which Antong Yik, Koneti actor, Canela let film ni. Okay. So now, actor could define by listing members of that term. Nei kon la actor, bilis neke, ko kan members in actor. Okay. So Ramichi lul de Geo, Kola let film ni. This actor Ramichi lul de Geo, Ramichi Emmanuel Jal, Ramichi Uchantong Yik. Ramishia, my Chang, all the people then call alert moving. Okay, alert moving. So no more, Chalong enumerative. Measure you call athlete, define. This was athlete Ramishia, Ramke look, Ramishia Gatoy Panoam, Ramishia Ramkel James, Ramishia Atwong, Ramishia, and Nay Dialocon along to athlete, Langarga Kuru, Kate and Koo. So no more, technical more Chalong, enumerative definition. You define the term by listing individual key members of that term, key members of that class individually. Okay, individually. Madong, mutually definition by subclass. Definition by subclass meaning term we define by naming subclass of that class. Okay, and term more be subclass ke tin da pin de big name. Okay, big name we define. So definition by subclass assign meaning to a term by naming either partially or complete. Ko kan subclass to kon da pin term no more big list kan dia kie betangin big list bone matter but be defined lo ku list ngota ku list subclass ku list subclass. So much I yoku professional ke professional person define professional. This is professional person mean person such as doctor, architects, engineer, mugungu ne the second rock subclass of muta of professional. Ko she can deal, okay? Ke subclass. Ko professional ta doctor tin ta ne kon la engineering kane kon la teacher nguni dial to kon dial. Ke nguni ta professional but be defined by listing by naming subclass of that term, okay, of that class, subclass of that class. So through definition can technique in extensional definition then go to create define by listing members of that term, okay, by listing members of that term. Mandong a technique of intentional connotative definition. So kon and technique and intentional me could define intentionally be attribute ni key qualities ni in term more can be ladder can be mentioned on it buku term ko define. Okay, so technique of intentional definition manyam tamutuale synonymous definition tetin the etymological definition tetin to operational definition tetin and then the definition by genus and difference takan tin gatro triga kanmu can definition key technique of definition, key intentional definition. Okay, so let's see them one by one. Okay, so synonymous definition or read who term could you define by muta by using another word that has essentially the same meaning. Ko term could define be read mishatken key read mutakan gajan the same meaning. Again be lelona again be use ko be read more be defined. So the definite connote exactly the same attribute as the definitum. So definition in kel lodian and kel quality skin can kel on. Okay, for example right now much our physician is war am doctor, physician mean doctor, so physician can a doctor can the same because they work a kel quality skin can the same. Okay, which our intentional this mean willful. Okay, these are two they are exactly the same thing. ko willful jen intentional, okay? Ka intentional jen mu jen willful. Mi chawo observe this wo mean see, ko mu kudu observe wo guje. So in synonymous definition, would we define by providing word can get the same meaning, okay? Can get the same meaning. So therefore, can read it, they use interchangeably. Definitum can define, they get they get interchange. Theater right now, physician don't really define doctor mean physician. The same, kakena kelo, okay? Kakena kelo. No more chualungu synonymous definition. So the etymological definition, okay? Etymological definition. So in any etymological definition, I mean, we are aware of it. Nika biology ni ka tingwan. La wari na may etymologically mean and come. So an etymological definition, we could explain by showing its historical linguistic origin. Wa betin, wa tuwagtin read more. So we define gumu wa tuwagtin. For example, the philosophy come from Greek word. Okay, so on the chapter 1. Philosophy will come from Greek word. So one more could define by muta by showing the historical key original root do read no more. Wa tuwagtin key wa betin. So philosophy come from Greek word. Philo mean love, and Sophia mean wisdom. So melono love of wisdom. So no more etymological definition of term. You define term by showing its historical and or linguistic origin. Okay. So madam operational definition. So operational definition it assigns meaning to word by specifying a certain experimental procedure, and it is carried out by performing the action, operation, activities, and procedure that the word implies. For example, one substance is other than another if and only if one is cried the other when the two are rubbed together. Now you are showing the action. Alright. So co-operational definition, you are defining term by performing key showing procedure that the word imply. Okay, key activities. Okay, theater no kele no bume. Come on down. Di nyo the nimis chekel mo cha tiap palte di. So no money chalo operational definition. A definition by genus and difference. So the definition by genus and difference, manam be genus door be ngach. Meshi ngach then be characteristic. Manjak jako take a different. Can members ne take a kel ke genus mo. Be only lead bio mention. Ko ba ko ngaji na me rai kwiri specifically. So in logic, genus mean relatively large class, and species mean relatively smaller subclass. Key is smaller of the genus. For instance, if you may speak animal as a genus, by speech. Okay. So what you have to know the most definition by genus and difference in or be genus be identified or which one is genus. Okay. Be speech being identify or which one is a speech. But don't be terminal who define exactly be sure narrow down. Okay. Be sure narrow down. For example, Michikon water chikona kan la genus. Okay. Michikon water chikona kan la genus. The water type of water take than one. Chikon ice chikona ban kan la speech. Okay. Chikon ice chikona ban kan la speech. So men ku ice ku more different ka water kong original prosen. Okay. Oh prosen. Michikon man chikona kan la genus. Then chikona husband chikona ban kan la speech. Blue man. Ko rami husband a wood. Men mo husband mo different ke man to come. Odi or rami shikwen and husband. Okay. Or rami shikwen. Similarly, Michikon female chikona kan la genus. Okay. Michikona kan la genus female. Female to ready to one. Or I'm female kale or rami chakala shek. Right, me chakala nyal. Okay, me chakala nyal. So men Michikona kan female la genus chikon mother chikon bagan kan la speech. Mo mother mo different ke female to kon wood or mother rama foreign. Okay, rama tagagat rama chidap. Okay, rama chidap. So no more janta la kon great la kon define by water by genus and difference. Okay, so by genus and difference. So finally, channel criteria for lexical definition. Channel which lexical definition is going to part 1 or moon definition manan me put define katar mutadita katar mo wan mo use ke commonly. Okay, teacher ke dictionary definition to con. So lexical definition. So criteria rule and lexical definition why should match to the standard of proper grammar. Okay, one of them quite define lexically in definition big ying mic and motor can standard of proper grammar. proper grammar ke standard of proper grammar ma cha accept we mon beriya mo basic jarida basic match keje so very basic match keje so a definition should be grammatically correct jalor kano definition bangu basic correct definition word okay so a definition word for example chan three chan ko magwid bane vacation which I define vacation is when you don't have to go to work or school so no money she definition be correct okay ko tangwani di ne kan chu dwal chu ke klat especially mi shi jin gor ani shi da work lat okay ko gwa mi shi tin ka vacation ba do shi jin gor yen for example ata ka correct definition ka vacation or they define vacation mean a period during which activity is suspended from work or school okay wo mi dong mate ga melade chaji kula mo ilu hawa long tin na mo shwele ajin nguta ajin definition dun vacation but chi wo mi chi wo dwal gora ke chi wolet dini kan chi wolet kan chi dwal gora ko dong te chi ta dwal gora ki dong chi let okay so ka rule nyam your definition be yi nguta be yi correct grammatically ki be standard dun proper grammar be match okay so be match so rule order lexical definition should convey or communicate the essential meaning or characteristic the word being defined okay so mo ko on read ko define ka lexical definition or the characteristics ni ten content kuriya mo ko differentiate kana to kong bagala lidi baga yiglat okay baga yiglat cha ko dong jor okay the essential characteristic te tin ta ka jan tam mo baga yiglat okay ko be cool differentiate kana tam to kong okay thus a correct definition attempt to find out the attributes that are essential to the distinguishing of the members of the class okay so beriat kia term bariat kita content kuja differentiate kan to kong bagi leli so bagi yiglat chak bo dong jor for example which kon human being right kon define mean featherless vibe so namani a simple okay a very simple definition so chi den characteristic mo ko human being ko leli ra ko differentiate kana to kong kana feather vibe to kong featherless vibe to kong so our correct definition about what basically human being mean the rational animal that has capacity to reason and to speak okay ko animal ten kong to kon la ka kon animal ka khel tele capacity ko dong da ka di da ka speak okay ka tele capacity ko dong da ka reason like verbally okay at least mi chang dong te le ro ke ngi rian to kon ga da ko kon very rational than them ka nyok bane to kon ka feel to speak therefore a lexical definition should communicate the essential characteristic of the term that are define okay of the term that are define so rule the audience or lexical definition should be neither too broad nor too narrow okay sẽ biết đi long cái sẽ biết quẹo long có mấy đi long và tôi còn bao marajo cái mấy sẽ quẹo long và ti dong để cái mà đi differentiate cái bao đẳng cho okay therefore but ngu ra bị giết từ đó qua mà tell me bao đẳng cho cái tell me bao cái term nào nó define okay so cái term nào nó define for example chan definition 3 ke very broad okay ke broad definition chan ga magud bene so mi cha bird mean any warm blooded animal having wing okay so mi cha no ri de meta de kong ti ma ba ne ba ga le di ba ga include okay so ba ga include ko de kong de ga wing ka shi ga ba ne okay for example ti shi ngu ta ti chat ke birds and birds mane ki nga ba ko do dan she bird okay she bird she did kata nguta ka warm blood and it also has wing ta gok ka warm blooded okay but she bad but ko cha dor ko definition bad cha ja ka too broad cha dir kong ti ma bad cha ko li di da so ko include okay cha ko include example long me cha pen mean an instrument used for writing so na mani da a broad definition ko dita ko be instrument dial ten dong ko gor na ba le ba ke include ka ta ngwan chi ka fen ne okay to gor na kan dial chi ka fen ne okay for example ta ngada ten ta chok instrument mo gor na ka je but chi fen okay so to jere kan draw definition cha bia too broad mi cha too broad be to kong bo ko ma jo ko draw dong chi kan ta ka jana mo okay so chana narrow definition ni chana ka mo so for example mi cha bird cha define mean warm blooded feathered animal that can fly so na minute too narrow ko ta tan din di chita dita she fly ta tan din di chi fly but mi cha bird mi cha define that way but tan din to kong di fly ba ka le di ba ka dang jor for example to would did children but catch a fly did catch a fly a bird but a fly so on definition mon cha narrow ko dit cha tan din cha dang jor so min cha gan mean the tool use it in battle for defending so na mana boni da che gan ala ngadaga la characteristic da kon da gan da differentiate kan da kon cha le lita cha dang jor okay cha dang jor therefore one lexical definition cha biangu cha bia ne cha bia too broad ka cha bia too narrow bo okay cha bia too narrow so rule one in lexical definition to avoid circularity okay that mean mi ko riat ko define she be define ke the same word nyok manana ko ma ko define she be define no okay ko what did wa mi she define no cha additional information ni ku riat mo ku ke in confess ke ku riat mo ku ke include check bele le check bu marajo ba ka dangjo okay therefore be riat be define ko ngura ke riat in kong the content da riat mo tin de la riat mo for example the ku religious ku define mean anyone engaged in religious activity so na minute chi te kong to content essential characteristic ni te dan ndi lat ko being religious chi ka bang jor ko de chi rate chi define ka the same rate te la te maten te information to one de cha again the same rate to use on it chi could define ka okay so scientists mean anyone who engage in science so scientists can science can actually the same she could be designed she could be defined that way okay she could be defined no ko dita and scientists she was circular she work sang mukule define scientist ugoro characteristic kan scientist diga lat ko de ko ngach ene me yan scientist ba mi ko le who engage in science ba ko ngach sanyi memet okay ba ko ngach sanyi memet therefore an definition mane circular okay circular definition same to religious no ba mi ko le the person who engage in religious activity she taran me de ko ngach ke religious activity ni ko mun she le li ta she ka dangjor okay so no mane circular definition while lexical definition should avoid circularity okay circularity rule of the lexical definition should not be negative when it can be affirmative and lexical definition mita do mo dong mo define it to be negative chabu define negatively okay chabu use negative definition of that word okay so chabu define negatively mida affirmative ki mida positive ba define do mo gwa de define it shima wo de define negatively okay for example da mo ku happiness kuje define mean not sadness okay na manita definition ko negative definition ko shi lo define ka do negatively lo shi majen okay so what do you let ready define ka do mi affirmative okay mishima negative okay affirmatively do you define happiness what tell lloyd okay shi do define you shi lloyd che so na money wa lexical definition mo by negative definition by leader by avoid medari mo me define affirmatively so be defining no positively chima word chima negative okay for example the negative they should define is state of well-being and contentment okay so kono no be that definition would explain what the term does mean rather than what it does not mean okay chi would define ko ichalo no one but be define lo no here more okay so lexical definition should not be negative when it can be affirmative okay rule of lexical definition should not be expressed in figurative, obscure, vague, or ambiguous language. Miluno odida and lexical definition book warit ko I define lexically. Chabu define ke kan term teacher can reach have express ke kan term three. Figurative language or don't read here later they define ke imaginary way, okay? Imaginary way. Obscure language odita or don't be read be defined ke mishima well known, okay? Kerian mishima well known. Kirian me to understand no ke gwa. So term chabu define ke term ko ke gwa, okay? So ke term ko ke gwa. Vague language rian metal is specificity. Okay, rian michima emphasize me emphasize michi emphasize or rian mone. Okay. So in lexical definition why chabu le chak back phrase ke vague language. By define ke emphasize language ngai ke gwa. Tanya rian me ngai ke. Okay. So men dong chabu le chabu define ko ambiguous language. Okay. Ki riat mi dong de define ke meta ke duk tung wana de interpret ke. Lexical definition riat ba define ke dua mo gwa mo bang ke je rian me jolor ko mone. Okay. Real major lord. So ka rule broad and lexical definition should avoid affective terminology. Terminology on influence either positively or negatively. They define for read the bank. Chada define the dormant of me don't share for soon now. okay cha da define ka do mo dong mi la che dong kwa for sure na but define the point area mo cha da define che kwa influence na okay so man badak dien lexical definition was to indicate the contact with the definite retain okay contact da nan kwa man kwa read kwa define ka je ko ci kon jak read ngwan ta definition ni read ngwan ni certain but definition contact by later by you indicate okay so ka definition reference to the contact is important so different mean different meaning in a different contact okay ko dira ko mi ci kon ko ta gari ta cha da ta tong ta chat ba contact din ba specify ka read to ko ba ko la jo ko contact me lo na read me ne for example mi cha seal mi cha ko read mi cha seal quite define so seal take a contact to goal okay but ba contact de ba provide ko ba ko la ngaji lo ni seal mi okay so chemical contact de cho seal lo no the basic structural and functional unit of living organism chemical contact okay chemical contact but ka prison cell is more room in which prison are kept so chana na da kan get different ka the same cell use kana so ka lexical definition ba contact ne nyin different na ba yi le ta ba ga yi lat okay so ba ga yi lat ko ko lo loy na ne me jen mu jen mu lor kene ne so mission ke jen mo jen chapter 3 dan jen tuk talk chapter 3 I hope bo loy dun ka ma kan loy dun ya te ke comment section gwa mo bata dong de la lat ke nyok ke tang ne ka dong de la ben yo lat ke nyok ba ya la ka chang banan ke specific ke short video okay so tag bi ron ti tiane ti ran ga le re ko ka TikTok so ka TikTok tag TikTok mi cha go do shop you can go there so dia follow from there dia short video ne ti la video tri lan ko yang ko check baka upload gwa mi so di ko jakten okay mi ji ram la ko ni video ni check long so thank you so much ko share with this far qua like qua share qua comment biar terkenal thank you